A sleek black SUV sped forward and screeched to a halt in front of the Crown Vista Hotel in Denver, its tires grinding on gravel, roaring like a fateful blockade. The door swung open. A woman stepped out, her appearance so ordinary that no one in the lobby could imagine she was the storm about to sweep through everything. Elena Moore, 48, with deep-set eyes and lips pressed into a quiet line, walked with a calmness as if the entire city was nothing more than a rest stop on her journey. No designer dresses, no glittering diamonds, only worn leather shoes, a light grey blazer over a thin sweater, and a canvas bag frayed from countless trips. To anyone who didn't know, she might have looked like a professor or a mid-level employee leaving after a long shift. No one realized that this woman was the owner of the very hotel towering above them, shining like a beacon on a winter evening. In Elena's mind, strategies for the board meeting the next morning swirled. All she wanted was one quiet night. Nothing more. But life had never allowed her to walk into a room as just another guest. The Crown Vista lobby glowed in golden light, polished marble underfoot, the murmur of conversations blending into the background music of luxury. Elena walked straight to the reception desk. Behind it was Rachel Kim, 26, her hair tied in a messy bun, her nails chipped, her eyes fixed on the screen. Hearing the tap on the counter, Rachel looked up, her gaze sliding over Elena before settling on the worn canvas bag. A flicker of disdain flashed across her eyes. "Hello? I'd like to check in." "More?" "Elena," Elena said, her voice low and steady. Rachel's fingers froze on the keyboard. She frowned, tapped a few keys, then looked up. "I'm sorry, Mom. The hotel is fully booked. We are only accepting guests with reservations." Her tone was polite, but icy, like she was turning away a lost stranger. Elena suppressed a smile. "There is always a suite held for me." Her voice was calm, as if she was ordering coffee rather than asking for privilege. Rachel smirked, her smile edged with mockery. "Not tonight. There is no record of your name in the system." The air in the lobby shifted. A couple sipping cocktails stopped their conversation, glancing over. A man at the bar raised his eyebrows, waiting for entertainment. Elena kept her faint smile, her gaze unwavering. "Perhaps you should take another look." "This is Crown Vista, isn't it?" she asked. Rachel folded her arms, her voice half amused, half derisive. "Yes, but I'm certain you are mistaken. About the place, or perhaps about your role." Elena tilted her head, her eyes piercing through the flimsy arrogance. "My name is carved right on the sign outside. I own this place." The words landed like a stone tossed into a lake, sending ripples across the lobby. Whispers broke out. Did she say she owns it? Impossible. Rachel let out a sharp laugh, her voice loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "You mean to say you own this hotel?" Elena did not react. She only nodded lightly, as if stating an obvious fact. Rachel shook her head, smirking. "I'm sorry, but there are no records to support that." "Perhaps you should try another hotel." Every gaze in the lobby turned sharp, slicing into Elena. She was used to those looks, doubtful, dismissive. But within her serene silence lurked a storm ready to strike. "Call your manager," Elena said, her tone even, as if asking the time. Rachel sighed, picking up the phone. "Fine, but I think you're asking for trouble." Within minutes, David Lang, 40, the night manager, stepped out from a small office, clutching a clipboard like a shield. His smile was forced, his eyes wary. "What seems to be the problem?" Rachel pointed at Elena. "She says she is the owner of the hotel." David hesitated, then squinted at Elena from head to toe. He saw a middle-aged woman, dressed plainly, carrying no sign of authority. He chuckled dryly. "Madam, I'm sorry, but your name is not on the list. Perhaps you've come to the wrong place." 2 security guards appeared, standing like walls on either side, all eyes fixed on Eleanor. Yet she did not argue, did not raise her voice. Calmly, she pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, then lifted it to her ear. Her voice was low, clipped, and cold. "This is Elena Moore. Crown Vista, Denver. I have just been denied entry into my own hotel. Take care of it." The call ended in less than 20 seconds. Elena slipped the phone away, placed her hand on her bag strap, and stood still like a statue. She didn't need to say another word. That silence suffocated the entire lobby. David swallowed hard, sweat beading on his temple. Rachel frowned, unable to believe it. Guests discreetly raised their phones, recording video. Suspicion shifted into anticipation. Was this a charade, or was the truth about to explode? Elena was in no hurry. She had stood in far more tense arenas, where even the slightest frown could destroy a career. She knew well. Sometimes the greatest power lies in calm patience. Then came the chime of the elevator. The doors slid open. 2 men strode out, their footsteps sharp, their gazes cutting like blades. Marcus Bell, 52, Regional Vice President in a tailored grey suit, and Hector Diaz, 44, Branch Director with a tablet in hand. Neither acknowledged Rachel or David. They went straight to Elena. "Mrs. Moore," Marcus bowed slightly, his voice urgent, his eyes locked on her. "Our deepest apologies." "This is an unacceptable incident," Hector added quickly, slightly breathless. "Suite 1501 is ready. The car is always at your service. Breakfast will be prepared as usual, buttered toast and black coffee." The lobby froze. Rachel's eyes went wide. David stood stiff, his clipboard slipping from his hands. The 2 guards immediately stepped back. Guests gaped, murmurs rising. She really is the owner. Elena only smiled faintly, as if she had known it all along. She murmured, "Just one call is enough." The words fell like a final hammer blow, shattering every doubt. In that instant, the balance of power shifted completely. The whispers in the Crown Vista lobby had not yet faded after the stunning revelation. Guests who had just witnessed a scene that felt ripped from a film were murmuring among themselves, a few phones still secretly recording. The truth was undeniable. Elena Moore was no anonymous guest, but the owner of the very building they were standing in. Yet suspicion lingered, the shadow of prejudice drifting like thin smoke. Rachel Kim remained frozen at her post, face pale, lips trembling without sound. Just minutes earlier, she had sat with authority, fingers pounding the keyboard like she controlled the world. Now, arrogance had collapsed into emptiness, leaving her adrift in shock. David Lang was different. He shakily gathered his clipboard, forcing a smile, trying to speak to smooth things over. But Marcus Bell silenced him with a single cold glance, one sharp enough to force the 40-year-old man to swallow his words. Elena stayed silent. She stood in the center of the lobby like an unshakable monument. She did not need to shout. She did not need to prove anything. Her presence alone was enough, and the truth radiated on its own. "Mrs. Moore, please," Hector said, bowing his head. His voice was urgent, almost pleading. "We will escort you to your suite." But Eleanor didn't move. Her eyes swept over every face. Rachel staring at the floor, David looking away, the guards clasping their hands behind their backs, pretending innocence. Only then did she speak, slow and deliberate, each word dropping heavy onto the marble floor. Before I walk up to my own room, I want to know, who allowed employees here to turn the owner into an outsider? Silence fell across the lobby. Even the clink of a spoon at the bar stopped. Elena did not shout. She simply asked, but the question cut sharper than any raised voice. David tried to recover, clearing his throat. Mrs. Moore, perhaps it was a misunderstanding. Our procedure. What procedure? Elena interrupted, her eyes drilling into him. The procedure that made my presence invisible? The procedure that taught you to classify guests by their appearance? David's throat tightened, his hand trembling as papers slipped from his clipboard and scattered across the floor. Suddenly Rachel blurted out, her voice small but ringing clear in the silence. I didn't think you looked like the unfinished words were understood by all. She did not look like an owner. She did not look like someone with power. She only looked like an ordinary middle-aged woman, not fitting the image Rachel had carried in her mind. Elena turned to her, her gaze softer but still piercing. Not look like? That not looking like is what led you to judge wrong. And judging wrong, sometimes, is what brings an entire system down. Her words struck like a blade, yet carried no hatred, only truth. Marcus stepped forward, his tone firm. Rachel, David, you will answer in tomorrow morning's meeting. Here and now, I declare, every Crown Vista employee will undergo retraining. No exceptions. The decisive announcement hit like a gavel, sending a shock wave through the lobby. Rachel's lips quivered, stunned. David bowed his head, sweat rolling down his temple. Elena arched an eyebrow, glancing at Marcus and Hector. In her eyes flickered a blend of approval at their swift action and disappointment that things had decayed so far before anyone intervened. A mocking chuckle came from the bar. A man who had been watching all along sipped his drink and muttered to his friend, "Well, that was quite a show." From receptionist to manager, all frozen before her. But his laugh died when Eleanor looked his way. It was not anger, not rage, only a cold, still gaze, enough to bring a flush to his cheeks and force him to turn away. The lobby sagged into heavy silence. Eleanor drew a slow breath, then gave a slight nod. Very well. Take me up. Marcus and Hector hurried to lead the way. But just as Elena turned, she left behind a single statement, her voice even. Not raised. Remember this. I do not need apologies. I need change. The words lingered like an echo as she stepped into the elevator. The steel doors closed, cutting off the stunned faces left behind. Rachel collapsed onto the desk, her fingers trembling as they struck the keyboard at random. David retreated quietly into the background, as if trying to vanish from the light. But the power struggle was far from over. Tonight was only the beginning. The elevator carried Elena to the 15th floor. When the doors slid open, warm golden light bathed the carpeted hall. Suite 1501 was ready. Hector opened the door, bowing. "Please, Mrs. Moore." Elena entered. The room was filled with the scent of cedarwood, crisp sheets neatly folded, and on the table a tray with buttered toast and steaming black coffee. Beside it lay a handwritten note. "We sincerely apologize, Chef." Elena set her bag down and sat in the leather chair by the window, gazing at the glittering Denver skyline. It was all hers, yet the victory left a bitter taste. Memories rushed back. 20 years earlier in Chicago, a receptionist had handed her a broom, assuming she was housekeeping staff. She had laughed then to hide the sting. But that wound had never healed, and tonight it had been torn open again. Elena sipped her coffee, bitter but bracing. What filled her heart was not rage, not an urge for instant punishment. It was resolve. Tomorrow morning, she would not only face Rachel and David, she would face the entire system that had allowed its own owner to be turned into an outsider within her own house. Outside, Denver roared with life, but inside Suite 1501, Elena Moore was winding the spring for a far greater battle, 7 o'clock in the morning. The lobby of the Crown Vista was not yet crowded, but the air was already thick with tension. Elena Moore's footsteps echoed on the marble floor, firm and steady, like the measured beat of a symphony building toward its climax. She no longer wore the simple sweater from the night before. Today she was dressed in a charcoal suit, sharply tailored, her face illuminated under the lights, narrowing the entire room around her presence. With every step, she drew the eyes of passers-by. Businessmen clutching briefcases, families dragging suitcases, staff are rushing about. All paused for a moment, whispering to each other. That's her, the woman from last night. The story had spread throughout the hotel faster than any news bulletin. Near the concierge desk, Marcus Bell and Hector Diaz were already waiting. They looked like men who had endured a sleepless night, dark circles under their eyes, coffee steaming in their hands, thick folders at their sides. Seeing Elena, they hurried forward, their voices overlapping. "Good morning, Mrs. Moore." Elena only nodded, offering no more words. She turned directly into the glass-walled meeting room, where the morning light revealed everything like a stage without curtains. Inside, David Lang twisted his tie, his face ashen. Rachel Kim sat nearby, hands clasped, her eyes fixed on the table. At the head of the table was Linda Park, 39, head of human resources, her laptop open, her expression calm but unreadable. Elena advanced to the head of the table, standing tall with arms crossed. No chair, no barrier. She wanted every gaze to rise and meet her directly. "All right," she said, her voice low and commanding. "Tell me what happened last night. From your own mouths." A long silence stretched. The hum of the air conditioner suddenly seemed loud. David tried to speak, but his throat seized, producing only broken syllables. At last, Rachel broke the quiet, her voice small and thread-like. I didn't think you looked like the hotel owner." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Didn't look like?" Rachel bit her lip, nodding faintly. "Yes, I thought you were just a regular guest." No reservation, no Elena stepped slowly toward Rachel, each step pounding against the girl's racing heart. When she stopped, Elena tilted her head, her voice slow and cold. "Last night, did I raise my voice?" Rachel shook her head. "Did I insult you?" Another shake. "Did I threaten or cause trouble?" A third, desperate. No slipped out. Elena straightened, turning to Linda Park. "I want to know why this happened in a hotel that bears my name." Linda typed a few lines into her laptop, then replied, "The intake procedures didn't anticipate such situations. Personal bias hasn't been fully addressed in training. It is a systemic gap." "No," Elena cut her off, her eyes sharp as blades. "This is not the fault of procedures. This is the fault of people. And these people reflect the culture we have allowed to exist." David lowered his head, his voice hoarse. "Madame, I was only following policy." Elena turned, her gaze drilling into him. 2 years as manager here, and you never learned my name." David swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes. "I knew, but you didn't recognize me," Elena finished for him, her voice so cold it seemed to freeze even the lobby outside. She turned to Rachel. "And you? 6 months working here. Did you ever wonder who built the place where you sit and work every day?" Rachel shook her head, eyes brimming with tears. Eleanor drew a long breath. then spoke, each word carved into the floor beneath them. 15 hotels, from the East Coast to the West. I built this Crown Vista chain from nothing, because I was tired of being dismissed, of being invisible. And last night, in my own house, you made me an outsider once again." The room fell silent. Marcus and Hector exchanged glances, too cautious to speak. Linda typed steadily, her keys clacking as if recording every cold strike of Elena's words. Elena turned, surveying the entire room through the glass walls. Outside, staff and guests watched closely, every movement exposed. Nothing could be hidden. "You will not be dismissed immediately," Elena continued, her tone grave. "But you will be held accountable. From this moment, the entire Crown Vista system will undergo training in respect and inclusivity. Not soulless lectures. I want you to understand, deep in your bones, that a single wrong judgment can destroy a person. Or an empire?" Marcus nodded rapidly. "We will begin at once, madam. No one will be exempt." Elena closed her eyes briefly, as if holding back a storm inside her. When she opened them, she looked directly at Rachel, her voice softer, but cutting clear. "Assumptions aren't neutral. They carry a cost, and last night, that cost was undeniable." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, her lips trembling. I'm sorry," Elena shook her head. "I don't need apologies. I need change." She turned sharply, leaving the room in heavy silence. Behind her, Linda Park shut her laptop with a sigh. Marcus and Hector exchanged hurried words, their faces grave. David bowed his head, while Rachel covered her face with trembling hands. But Eleanor knew. This was only the beginning. The real lesson had to come from the heart, not from lines of policy on a page. And she was prepared for that journey. 9 a.m. The employee lounge tucked behind the Crown Vista bar was cramped, bathed in pale fluorescent light, carrying the faint smell of burnt bread and stale coffee. On the cold metal table sat a forgotten latte, long since gone cold. Rachel Kim hunched over it, her trembling hands wrapped around the cup, her eyes red from a sleepless night. The door swung open. Heels clicked sharply against the floor. Elena Moore entered, her charcoal suit perfectly pressed, her gaze sharp, though her voice was lower now, stripped of the icy tone she had used in the boardroom. Rachel jolted upright, startled like a student caught off guard. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Moore," she blurted, her voice choked. Eleanor lifted a hand, motioning for her to sit. "Calm down. This isn't round 2. The tension eased slightly. Rachel hesitated, then sat again, clutching the latte cup like a lifeline. Elena pulled out a chair, sitting across from her, close enough for Rachel to see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, traces of 2 decades of relentless battles. "Have you ever felt small in your work?" Elena asked, her tone gentler, almost conversational. Rachel froze, then nodded. "Yes, before coming here, I worked at a truck stop on the interstate. Customers never looked at me. The manager yelled all the time. Every day I felt invisible." Elena nodded slowly. "It's a miserable feeling, isn't it? As if your worth amounted to nothing." Rachel lowered her eyes, murmuring, "Yes." Elena leaned forward, her voice suddenly firm. "Then why, last night, did you make me feel exactly the same?" The question struck straight into Rachel's chest. She opened her mouth, but the sound caught in her throat. At last she whispered, I thought you were just a stranger. You didn't look like an owner?" Elena cut her off, her gaze locked on Rachel. "What does an owner look like? Pale skin, an expensive suit, a gold watch? If I don't fit the picture in your head, does that mean I deserve to be dismissed?" Rachel stayed silent, her fingers gripping the cup so tightly her knuckles whitened. Elena sighed, her tone softer but unyielding. "Rachel, that's the trap. The trap of bias. You carry a mold in your mind, and anyone who doesn't fit it, you diminish. You don't realize that can break a person. Or an entire system." A small sob escaped Rachel. Tears brimmed in her eyes. "I didn't mean to. I don't need apologies," Elena interrupted evenly. "I need you to see me." Rachel looked up, stunned. Elena continued, her voice deliberate and steady. "I started my career at a front desk, too. Philadelphia. Night shift. Guests never remembered my name, just called, 'Hey you.' A manager once told me I was too sharp to work in hospitality. But I stayed and climbed. I built Crown Vista from the ground up. Because I wanted people who had been dismissed to have a place to rise. And last night, you reminded me why that mission is still unfinished." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. You were a receptionist?" Elena gave a faint, bittersweet smile. "Yes. One small step that began a long road. And I want you to understand, you're not hopeless. But if you want to endure, start with one thing. Respect every guest, no matter who they are. Never make anyone feel the way you once did, or the way you made me feel last night." Tears rolled down Rachel's cheeks. She nodded quickly, whispering, "Thank you. I'll do better." Elena rose, adjusting her jacket, her gaze softer. "I believe you can. But belief isn't enough. Prove it." She left the room, her footsteps light but resonant. Rachel sat still, gripping her latte cup, crying and smiling weakly at once. In her heart, a door had cracked open. The door to change. Meanwhile, in the management office, the air was different. Marcus Bell paced with a fistful of files. Hector Diaz typed furiously, sending urgent messages to the entire staff. Linda Park prepared training materials, adding new slides titled "Empathy Screening," the first step toward reform. Elena entered, taking her seat at the head of the table. No one dared speak. She turned page by page through personnel files, her eyes dissecting every line. "I did not come to destroy Crown Vista," Elena said evenly. "I came to fix it. And we start here." Marcus cleared his throat. "You mean to change the entire hiring process?" "Not just the process," Elena replied. "I want to screen at the root. No more space for snap judgments based on appearances. From now on, new hires must pass empathy screening. I want to know they can see worth in people, not just in looks or money." Hector looked up, surprised. "That will cause major disruption." Elena nodded. "Yes, and that is what's needed. If this system weren't broken, there'd be no reason to change. But it is broken." "Last night proved it." Linda typed swiftly, her eyes brightening. "We'll also need to retrain all current staff. We can't just focus on new hires." "Exactly," Elena said. "I'll attend personally, and I'll show up unannounced at other hotels in the chain. No advance notice. I want real change, not rehearsed performances." Marcus gave a nervous laugh. "That will make a lot of people sweat." "Let them sweat," Elena replied, her eyes lit with resolve. Reality was never meant to be easy. The atmosphere thickened. Yet within that tension was a new energy. Elena knew reform had begun. Outside, the Crown Vista lobby had returned to its daily rhythm. Bellhops pushing luggage carts, guests checking in, baristas frothing milk for cappuccinos. But beneath the polished surface, transformation was stirring. At the front desk, Rachel sat with a different look in her eyes. She no longer cast careless glances at guests. Each guest who approached, she greeted by name if possible, her smile genuine rather than perfunctory. In her coat pocket, she carried a small slip of paper. Thank you for seeing me. I will do better." From the 15th floor balcony, Elena looked down at the busy lobby. She felt no triumph, no despair, only the awareness of a long road ahead. A road she knew she would continue to walk, step by steady step, until respect was no longer a privilege, but a given. Morning at Crown Vista moved on as usual, but behind the gleaming glass doors, unseen currents were shaking. Employees whispered about the night before, each rumor sharpened like a blade. It was the owner herself who got turned away. "They're going to lose their jobs. Word is the whole system will have to retrain." News spread faster than the smell of coffee from the bar. In the management office, the air was heavy as lead. Marcus Bell leaned against the window, eyes fixed on the traffic below, but his mind restless. Hector Diaz typed non-stop, sending warning emails to other branches. Linda Park flipped through thick stacks of documents, her red pen slashing lines across pages. Amid the bustle, Elena Moore walked in, her measured stride silencing every sound. She didn't need to slam the table or raise her voice. Her presence alone was command. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena said, her tone deep and steady. "I want to hear the plan. Not on paper." In reality, Marcus turned, adjusted his tie, his voice stiff. "We will launch retraining this week. All employees must attend. Additionally, we propose implementing a VIP identification system to prevent this from happening again." Elena frowned, cutting him off. "No, I don't want a system designed to prioritize me. I want a culture where every guest is respected. If you patch the hole by adding privileges for me, then you haven't understood the problem." The room fell into silence. Hector swallowed hard, daring to speak. "Then where do you want us to begin?" Elena stood tall, her gaze sweeping across them. With empathy, with teaching staff that a guest is not a room number, nor the clothes they wear. I want the lesson to sink into their hearts, not just their heads. Linda Park nodded softly, her eyes lighting up. "We could create role-playing scenarios, put employees in the shoes of guests who have been dismissed. When they feel it, then they will change for real." Elena gave a faint smile. "That's the right direction." She leaned back in her chair, her voice slowing with a touch of reflection. 20 years ago, I stood behind a front desk, just like Rachel. Last night, when I saw her eyes, I saw myself at 25, overlooked, dismissed. I don't blame her alone. I blame the system that allowed prejudice to seep in." Marcus bowed his head. "We understand, Mum, but it will be very difficult to change from the root." Elena leaned forward slightly, her eyes blazing. "Difficult does not mean impossible. If Crown Vista wants to survive, we must do it. And we will." The meeting ended, but its weight lingered. Elena stepped into the lobby, every eye from guests and staff following her. Each look carried both curiosity and respect. Rachel stood behind the desk, forcing a smile for an elderly guest, her reddened eyes betraying her shame. When Eleanor's gaze passed, Rachel bowed her head, not out of fear, but out of gratitude for a second chance. A guest whispered to his wife, "That's the owner. I saw the video going around this morning." His wife's eyes widened. "Really? I can't believe they treated her like that." Elena heard but did not react. She didn't need noise. She needed results. That afternoon, in her large 15th floor office, Eleanor sat at a walnut desk. On her laptop screen, the internal report was stark. Customer complaints about staff, 12%. Employee turnover within the first year, 27%. Cold numbers, but to Elena they were alarm bells. She picked up the phone, calling the senior executive team. "Next week, I want a virtual meeting with all branch directors. One topic only: rebuilding our service culture. No polished reports, only the truth. On the other end came hesitation. But Mom, the media has started paying attention. Should we issue a statement? No, Elena cut in. I don't want this turned into tabloid headlines. This isn't about exposure. This is about repair. We stay silent, but we act. By sunset, the Crown Vista lobby was still bright. A family wheeled in suitcases, children running ahead. Rachel leaned down, offering her first genuine smile of the day. Welcome to Crown Vista. I'm Rachel, and it's my pleasure to assist you. The mother looked surprised, then smiled back. From a distance, Elena watched, the corner of her lips lifting slightly. She didn't expect everything to change overnight, but with one sincere smile, she knew the seed had been planted. That night, Eleanor sat once more by the window of Suite 1501. Denver's city lights spread beneath her. In her hand, she held a small note Rachel had slipped onto her tray. Thank you for seeing me. I will do better. Eleanor traced the words gently, her eyes glimmering with quiet resolve. She knew no flowery apology could compare to these few words. This was not the end. This was the beginning. She whispered softly, as if to herself, no one will be invisible in this house again. And with that, a new chapter opened for all of Crown Vista. The second morning after the incident, Crown Vista operated under a shell of normalcy, but inside, the system groaned like a machine in desperate need of oil. Front desk clerks whispered during their shifts. Guards changed posts without daring to look guests in the eye. An indescribable silence hung over every footstep, heavier than the faint jazz drifting from the bar. In the executive office, Elena Moore sat tall at the head of the table, a thick stack of files in front of her. Marcus Bell and Hector Diaz sat on either side, exhausted but wound tight as wires. Linda Park focused on the screen, a training slide flashing with the bold new title, Respect Beyond Titles. Let's begin, Elena's voice cut through, not loud but enough to smother every sound. Hector spoke first, hurried. I've sent alerts to all 14 other branches. Tonight, every manager will meet urgently. Staff will be required to sign a commitment to participate in training, no exceptions, Marcus interjected. I've also asked HR to review every guest feedback report from the past year. We need to know how many incidents like this have slipped through the system. Elena nodded, her eyes sharp with resolve. Good. But remember this. This isn't PR. This isn't for show. This is real change, and I will be the one to test it. The air thickened. Marcus swallowed hard. Hector clicked through slides quickly, trying to mask his unease. Elena leaned back, speaking slowly. Starting next quarter, I will appear unannounced at any branch. No warning, no script. I want to see the new culture in every glance, every gesture. If I don't, there will be no hotels left to keep. Marcus paled. That will put extreme pressure on the staff, ma'am. Elena allowed herself a cold smile. Pressure will reveal the truth. Anyone who cannot endure it doesn't belong here. Outside, staff began their first training session. A small hall had been set up on the ground floor, a large screen displaying the words, "Respect is not a privilege, it is the standard." Rachel sat in the front row, back straight, pen in hand. She knew every eye was on her, the one who had sparked the storm. But this time, instead of bowing her head, she faced forward. The memory of that night still lingered, Elena's words echoing. I need you to see me. The instructor began with a scenario. A woman wearing an ordinary coat arrives. No booking in the system. What do you do? a male staffer answered. Apologize politely. Refuse as per policy. Rachel hesitated, then raised her hand. I would look her in the eye, ask a few more questions, check if I missed something. Because a guest is not just a name on a screen. They may carry more than what we see. The room fell silent for a moment. The instructor nodded. That is the difference between serving and simply working. Elena stood at the doorway, watching everything. She did not step in, nor did she speak, but her gaze softened as it passed over Rachel. A silent acknowledgement. Later that afternoon, Elena met privately with Linda. The warm lamp cast a golden glow across the wooden table. Linda, I want every training session to use real stories. Not theories, not statistics. I want them to feel the pain of being dismissed, as I once did. As Rachel once told. Linda nodded, empathy shining in her eyes. I understand. We will gather real experiences from staff and guests. No hiding. Only truth can change hearts. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Memories flooded back. 25 years old. Night shift. A guest shoving loose bills into her hand, calling her the cleaning girl. That humiliation had become her fuel. And now she would turn it into a fire to guide an entire system. Night fell, Denver lit up, but Crown Vista buzzed like a restless hive. Old staff, new staff, all swept into the whirl of training and accountability. In Suite 1501, Elena stood by the window, holding the note Rachel had written days before. Thank you for seeing me. I will do better. She sighed. Change was never easy, but at least the seed had sprouted, and sometimes one sprout is enough to signal an entire forest will turn its leaves. The next morning, the first report landed on Eleanor's desk. Employee rating of training. 87% found it useful. But the number did not make her smile. She knew true change could not be measured in a day or two. In the margin, she wrote one line. Do not mistake participation for understanding. Then she looked up, her eyes burning bright. This battle would be long, but Eleanor Moore was ready. Tuesday morning. The lobby of Crown Vista glowed bright. Guests lined up at check-in, staff bustled about. On the surface, life seemed to have returned to its usual rhythm, but beneath it, the entire system still trembled after the earthquake named Eleanor Moore. Eleanor stepped out of the elevator, her cream-white suit sharp against her frame, her stride powerful, heels striking the marble like the drumbeats of war. Every gaze that landed on her quickly dropped. No one dared forget the moment she was stopped at the front desk, and how, with a single phone call, the entire system flipped upside down. Today was not for emergency meetings, nor training sessions. Today, Elena chose to observe. She sat quietly at a corner table in the lobby cafe, ordered an espresso, and watched. A middle-aged businessman entered, his shirt wrinkled, his suitcase old and battered. The young receptionist hesitated for a fraction of a second, then bowed slightly with a measured smile. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you? Elena noticed. No condescending glance, no cold voice. Instead, there was caution, perhaps even stiffness, but it was at least a change. She sipped her espresso. Bitter, sharp, yet awakening. She knew culture could not change in one night. But fear was sometimes the first step toward learning respect. And fear, if guided correctly, could transform into awareness. On the 15th floor, in the office, Marcus Bell, Hector Diaz, and Linda Park waited. When Elena walked in, all three stood at once. Report? Elena asked, her tone low. Hector handed over his tablet, speaking quickly. The other branches have responded. Some managers are concerned that the empathy screening will slow down recruitment. They fear losing talented candidates. Elena raised an eyebrow. Talented? What does that mean? Quick and efficient, but blind to guests. To me, that is useless. Tell them this. If they refuse to change, they can leave Crown Vista. Marcus spoke carefully. Some shareholders have caught wind of the incident. They want to know how you plan to handle it. Should we hold a private meeting to reassure them? Elena let out a cold laugh. I do not need to reassure shareholders. I need to reassure guests. If the guests trust us, the shareholders will follow. But if the guests turn their backs, no shareholder can save us. Linda typed each word silently, her eyes steady. To her, Elena was no longer just a CEO. She was a living verdict, delivering judgment with her very presence. Late in the afternoon, Elena decided to drop in on a training session unannounced. The hall was packed with staff. On the projector screen, bold words read, "Respect is not optional." The instructor posed a scenario. A young guest in a torn hoodie and a backpack approaches the desk. "What do you think?" Silence blanketed the room. A few murmurs slipped through. Elena's voice cut in from the doorway, firm and resonant. "What do you think?" Every head turned. The air froze. Rachel sat in the front row, lifted her gaze. She trembled, then raised her hand. "I think before I assume anything, I should greet them with a smile. Because I don't know who they are, and the way I treat them will always say more about who I am." Elena stepped inside, clapping slowly. The sound echoed, cold and sharp. Correct. You may guess wrong. But never let your guess turn into judgment, because judgment can strip a person of their chance. And sometimes that chance is also an opportunity for us. The staff looked at one another, heads bowed. They knew. This was no longer training. This was sentencing. And Eleanor Moore was the judge. Night fell. The city of Denver shimmered with lights. In Suite 1501, Eleanor read through reports on her laptop. Her eyes paused on Linda's note. New employee Rachel Kim shows positive signs of change, actively participated in discussion, shared personal experiences. Eleanor leaned back, a faint smile touching her lips, not the smile of victory, but of someone who had planted a seed. One small seed, if nurtured, could grow into a tree, and with enough trees, a forest could rise. She whispered softly to herself, "This is only the beginning." The next morning, Elena decided to leave Denver for the next branch. The car was ready. As she walked through the lobby, every staff member stood tall, greeting in unison. "Good morning, Mrs. Moore." Rachel stood among them, her eyes full of gratitude. As Elena passed, she discreetly handed her a small, folded note. Elena slipped it into her pocket without looking. Only once inside the car did she open it. The words were messy but sincere. "I once failed to see you, but now I want to learn to see everyone. Thank you for giving me a chance." Elena clenched the note, her eyes glowing with determination. The black SUV rolled forward, leaving the hotel behind. Outside, Denver still gleamed brightly, but within Crown Vista's heart, a fire had been lit. A fire called trust. The SUV carrying Elena Moore rolled out of Denver, leaving behind the glowing tower of Crown Vista. But as the car merged onto the highway, Elena did not feel relief. Instead, her heart carried the weight of a battle far from over. Denver was only the beginning. Ahead lay 14 more branches, each one potentially hiding the same fractured culture. She opened her laptop. A string of reports waited. Seattle, staff complaints about management's attitude. Chicago, VIP guest misassigned room. Atlanta, complaints about preferential treatment. The words looked dry and factual on the screen, but to Elena they were cracks along the wall of a dam, ready to burst if not reinforced in time. She called Marcus and Hector. Their faces appeared on screen, tired but tense. "We cannot just fix one hotel," Elena said firmly. "We must reform the entire system." Marcus frowned. "But the cost will be enormous. The shareholders will object." Elena leaned back, eyes burning with fire. "Shareholders invest for profit. But if we lose customer trust, profit is worth nothing. I would rather spend to repair now than lose the entire empire later." Hector nodded, flipping through documents. "We can launch in 3 phases: staff screening, comprehensive retraining, and regular audits. But we need your signature to force all branches to comply." Elena did not hesitate. "Do it now. And remember, this is not just a project. This is a promise. I will personally oversee it." That evening, Elena stopped at a small roadside hotel. She chose not to reveal who she was, only to observe quietly. At the counter, a young receptionist smiled warmly. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you?" That smile caught Elena off guard. It reminded her of herself years ago, a young woman who only wanted to be seen, to be called by her name. She smiled back, letting rare softness touch her face. Perhaps the world still held hope, but she knew hope must be protected by action, not left to chance. 2 days later, at the central office in Chicago, Elena chaired a virtual meeting with all branch directors. 15 squares lit up on the screen, faces varied, anxious, skeptical, even defiant. A middle-aged director spoke up. "Mrs. Moore, I understand your purpose. But we already have procedures. If we keep retraining endlessly, staff will become weary." "And the costs?" Elena raised her hand, cutting him off. "Your procedures allowed me to be refused at my own hotel. Tell me, what are those procedures worth?" Silence filled the room. She continued, her voice like a cold blade. "If we cling to so-called perfect procedures, we will bury ourselves. What I want is culture, and culture cannot be measured by pages of manuals. Culture shows in every glance, every word, every nod to a guest." A young female director cautiously asked, "But how do we measure culture?" Elena gave a sharp smile, eyes blazing. "With truth, I will appear unannounced at any branch. No warning, no script. I will be the measure." Murmurs rippled across the call, but no one dared argue. They knew. Once Elena spoke, her words were no suggestion. They were law. After the meeting, Elena stayed alone in the glass-walled office, looking out over Chicago's glowing streets. She recalled being 25, hunched in a borrowed blazer, handed a broom by a hotel worker. That memory once cut like a knife, but now it burned as a torch to guide her. She whispered, "If I climbed up from the bottom, I will pull this entire system up with me." Late that night in HR, Linda Park worked on a new training slide. On the screen, empathy first. Beneath it, the image of a nameless guest. No titles, only a smile. Marcus glanced over her shoulder, sighing. "Will this be enough to change anything?" Linda replied softly, eyes on the screen. "If it isn't enough, at least it is the beginning. And I believe she won't stop until it is enough." Marcus fell silent. He understood. Elena Moore was not the kind of leader who only spoke. She was the kind who turned painful memories into weapons, silence into thunder. And once she decided, not even shareholders could stand in her way. The next morning, the media caught wind. A small blog ran the story. Crown Vista owner refused at her own hotel. The news spread fast. Comments flooded social media. Shameful. She handled it so calmly. Respect should never be a privilege. Marcus rushed in, alarmed. "Mrs. Moore, the press has it. Should we respond?" Elena set down her coffee cup, gaze steady. No. Let the story speak for itself. Truth sometimes carries further than any statement. That afternoon, as she walked through the lobby, Elena saw Rachel assisting an elderly couple. Rachel's voice was clear, her smile genuine. As the couple left, Rachel glanced toward Elena and gave a small nod. Elena returned it with a slight nod of her own. In that fleeting exchange, Elena knew. Change had begun to take root. That night, Elena sat again by the window of her high-rise office. She unfolded the note Rachel had once written. "Thank you for seeing me." She placed it beside her laptop, a constant reminder. Then she wrote in her own notebook, "Respect does not come from rules. It comes from the heart, and I will make this entire system learn to see." The city lights cast a glow across her face, steadfast, unshakable. The reform had begun, and Elena Moore would not stop until no one in Crown Vista was invisible again. 1 week after the virtual meeting, Elena Moore decided to act. No announcement, no schedule, just a black SUV quietly carrying her to the Crown Vista branch in Seattle. Rain poured down in sheets, hammering against the car windows like a relentless drumbeat for an unexpected inspection. She entered the hotel lobby dressed simply, a light coat, a worn canvas bag, a face bare of makeup. No one recognized her as the CEO, and that was exactly what Elena wanted. Behind the reception desk, a young blonde clerk looked up, his face showing a trace of fatigue, but his voice professional. "Welcome to Crown Vista. How may I help you?" Elena gave a slight nod. "I need a room. Just for tonight." The clerk typed quickly, eyes focused. After a moment he looked up, a flicker of concern in his gaze. "I'm sorry. The system shows we're fully booked. But let me double-check." Elena remained silent, watching. He frowned, called the reservations team, exchanged a few quick words. Then he turned back, his tone earnest. "Ma'am, I'll do my best to arrange something. If you don't mind, I can put you on the priority list for cancellations." Elena tilted her head, her eyes glinting. This was different. No cold dismissal, no condescension. The clerk had chosen to see a person, not just a line on a screen. "Thank you," Elena replied softly, the corner of her lips lifting. Moments later, the shift manager, a middle-aged woman named Karen Holt, appeared. Her eyes swept over Elena and stopped at the worn canvas bag. Karen frowned. "I'm sorry, but the hotel is fully booked. We cannot accept walk-ins without a reservation." Elena stayed quiet. The moment was painfully familiar. For years, in countless places, she had been met with that same gaze, a gaze that sorted people by appearances. But before Elena could respond, the young clerk spoke up quickly. "Excuse me, manager. I checked with reservations. A guest just cancelled. Suite 903 is free." "I think she could," Karen cut him off, her voice sharp. "You don't have the authority to decide. This is a 5-star hotel, not a roadside stop." Elena closed her eyes briefly, inhaled deeply. That tone, that attitude. It was Denver all over again. But this time, she didn't need to make a call. This time, she would let the truth unfold right there. She pulled out her phone, opened the management app. With one tap, the Crown Vista logo glowed on the screen. Elena looked up, her voice low and cold. "I am Elena Moore. I own this chain of hotels, and right now I am watching my branch repeat the same mistake." The lobby buzzed with whispers. Karen froze, her face drained of color. The young clerk stared wide-eyed, realizing he had just spoken to the owner herself. Elena did not raise her voice. She continued steadily. "You tried to find a solution." She, on the other hand, shut the door immediately. "This is why we fail." Karen stammered. "I didn't know. I thought—" "You thought." Elena cut her off. "And what you thought nearly became reality. But today I am here to remind you, respect is not a choice. It is an obligation." Word spread quickly throughout the branch. Within the hour, Marcus called Elena, his voice tense. "Mrs. Moore, I just got the report. The entire system is in shock. Did the staff in Seattle truly see you?" Elena replied, her tone calm but resolute. "One of them did, and that is enough for me to believe the seed has sprouted." That night, Elena sat in Suite 903, the room the young clerk had fought to secure for her. She wrote in her notebook, "Change is not measured by presentations or slides. It is measured by the moment an employee chooses respect, even when their superior stands in the way." She paused, gazing out at rain drifting over Seattle. In her eyes, the city lights merged with unshakable resolve. "I will go to every branch. I will not stop until no one is invisible in the house called Crown Vista." The next morning, she summoned the young clerk to her office. He entered nervously, ink stains still smudged on his shirt. Elena gave a rare smile and handed him a special business card. "Advanced training. Next week, Chicago. I want you there." He blinked, astonished. "Me?" "Why me?" Elena answered simply. "Because you saw me. And more importantly, you saw a person before you saw a guest." She ended the meeting with a handshake, firm, warm, yet carrying the weight of a vow. No one deserves to be dismissed for appearances alone. The SUV rolled again, carrying Eleanor away from Seattle. Outside the window, the rain kept falling, as if washing away layers of prejudice. In her hand, Rachel's note still remained. Now, beside it, she placed the card she had just given the young clerk. 2 small fragments, but Eleanor knew, from such fragments, a larger picture was forming, a system rebuilt through empathy. And she whispered, her voice steady as steel, "This is not the end. This is only the flame being lit." 2 weeks after the inspection in Seattle, news about Elena Moore had spread throughout the Crown Vista system. From New York to Los Angeles, from Dallas to Miami, every branch whispered the same line. She could show up at any moment. In the hotel world, it was unheard of. A billionaire CEO not sitting on a leather chair at headquarters, but moving through her empire like a shadow, appearing without warning, testing every smile, every nod. For employees, it was both fear and inspiration. That morning, Elena walked into the lobby of Crown Vista Chicago. No announcement, no entourage, just herself in a black coat with the familiar canvas bag. A young front desk clerk looked up, his eyes flickering with slight hesitation at the sight of such a modest guest. But instead of judging, he bowed slightly, offering a warm smile. "Welcome, how may I assist you?" Elena nodded without another word. She didn't need speeches. She only needed that moment, a moment proving that the lesson was taking root. By afternoon, Eleanor gathered the entire management team in the glass-walled conference room on the upper floor. Marcus Bell, Hector Diaz, and Linda Park sat alongside branch directors, some appearing through video screens. The atmosphere was tense, but different from before. This time they were prepared, their eyes sharper, their voices steadier. "Report," Elena said. Hector began. "Seattle has launched empathy training. Employees responded positively. Many admitted they used to judge guests by appearances, but now they are more conscious. Linda continued. We also added practical sessions. Staff had to role-play as guests experiencing neglect and judgment. Some of them broke down in tears, and that moment, more than anything, drove change. Marcus drew a deep breath. Some shareholders are concerned about rising costs, but I told them plainly, investing in people is long-term profit. If they don't understand, they are free to leave. Elena observed them, her eyes burning with resolve. This was what she wanted, not fear of termination, but a shared belief in a principle. When the meeting ended, Elena rose, arms folded, her voice slow but powerful. Crown Vista is not just a hotel, it is a declaration that everyone deserves to be seen, no matter who they are, what they wear, or what they carry. That night in Denver was just a snapshot. But that snapshot revealed the cracks, and from those cracks, we have the chance to rebuild. The room fell silent, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Elena went on, her tone unwavering. I do not want you to memorize slogans. I want you to live them, because guests will not remember what we said. They will remember how we made them feel, and that feeling will decide the future of Crown Vista. Marcus bowed his head. We understand, ma'am. Elena nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Not pride, but recognition. Night fell, and the city of Chicago lit up in brilliance. Elena sat alone in the top suite, the glass windows opening to a skyline of endless lights. On the table lay 2 slips of paper, side by side. Thank you for seeing me. I will do better. From Rachel, I want to learn to see everyone. From the young clerk in Seattle. Elena placed her hand on both, her eyes softening in rare gentleness. These were not just words of gratitude. They were living proof that change had begun. She opened her notebook and wrote one final line. Everyone who has ever been dismissed carries a scar. But if we turn those scars into lessons, we can build an empire on the foundation of respect. The next morning, Elena left Crown Vista Chicago to fly to New York. On her way to the airport, she passed through the lobby. Employees stood upright, bowing in unison. A guest leaned down to whisper to his young son. That's the owner. She changed this entire system. The boy looked up, his eyes shining. Elena caught the sight, and for the first time in weeks, she laughed genuinely. The SUV rolled forward. Outside, the city roared as always. But inside Elena, a rare stillness settled. She knew this journey was far from over. There were still cracks to mend, still blind eyes to open. But Eleanor Moore was no longer alone. Now, an entire system had begun to see. In the world of business, people often believe power lies in numbers, revenue, shares, market value. But the story of Elena Moore proved a different truth. Real power lies in the ability to force an entire system to see the human being it once rendered invisible. From a worn canvas bag, from a rejected smile at the front desk, Elena transformed disregard into the catalyst for reform. She did not need to shout to be heard. Her strength lay in calm composure, in the gaze that dared to confront, in the determination to ensure no one would ever be diminished in the very house bearing the name Crown Vista. If you have ever been dismissed, ever been judged only for your appearance, remember this. Your worth does not lie in the eyes of others, but in the way you rise and assert yourself. Sometimes it only takes one person daring to say, "See me to change an entire system." If you believe that respect is not a privilege, but a fundamental right of every human being, hit like to help this story reach farther. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following these journeys where justice and dignity are given a voice. And before you leave, drop a comment with the words "Respect first," to affirm that you too believe respect must always come first.